Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of the Mint Techcetra podcast. Shavik is here as usual, and we are going to have a lovely discussion around very kind of. There hasn't been, I don't think there have been too many developments as far as AI is concerned. Part of the reason is because there are a lot of conferences that are going on simultaneously, even as we speak. One, of course, is the World Economic Forum. Meet at Davos, which is a very, very critical meet, and AI is an overpowering theme out there. This is close on the heels, or rather, it will be followed by the India Impact Summit, which is going to happen in India, which Shavik will be covering with a lot of intensity out there. You can see that smile on your face. And of course, we are going to talk about one aspect of this discussion. In fact, we'll open this episode with that discussion that Ashwini Vaishnaw, who is the IT Minister, of course, he holds other portfolios also. But when he was in a roundtable with the IMF Director, Kristalina Georgieva, uh, she referred to India as a second tier AI player, and that sort of got Ashwini Vaishnaw going and explaining that no, India belongs to the first tier rather, and has got a AI ecosystem that can rival any superpower on this planet.
And I don't know what the IMF criteria has been, but Stanford places India as third in terms of AI penetration, in terms of AI preparedness, and in terms of AI talent. Actually, on AI talent, it is number two. So I don't think your classification in the second bouquet is right. It's actually in the first.
Now, the interesting part is whether that is true or not. We'll be discussing that in a moment. But we'll also be discussing the Randstad Work Monitor 2026. Interesting observations out there, too, that while employees see employers make a lot more money with AI. So, because AI typically, whenever you have AI tools, employees see a lot of gains happening in terms of productivity, efficiency, and shareholder value. However, employees don't see a proportional gain. And that is something, Shavik, we should be discussing. Of course, Shavik has a lot to speak about the data center infrastructure in India, which is going to be part of the discussion of what Ashwini Vaishnaw said when he was countering Kristalina. So let's start with that. So when Kristalina said that India is a second tier one, personally, it got me. I was reflecting on that statement a lot, and I would subscribe to the view that. Let's put it this way. I mean, if I my this is my of course my personal opinion out here that if you look at the Stanford rankings, Shavik, we have spoken about that earlier also. India's ranking today is the third largest country as far as AI is concerned, from a point of view of software, hardware, and the entire electronics ecosystem, whether it is semiconductors, manufacturing, etc., and application space, especially. We are kind of the applications hub, or the applications global hub, in a sense, for AI. Now, when somebody refers to you as a second tier AI force, probably one of the references could be that the US and China are so far ahead as far as the rankings are concerned. So perhaps that's a thing. But then, if one were to take or try to find some logic in that argument to say, okay, fine, then the Europe is also any country, whether it is France or Japan or any other country, would obviously be lower in the rankings as far as AI is concerned. So all would be second tier kind of countries. Shovik, a quick take on yours. What do you feel? I mean, India clearly has a lot to do in this space, but currently, given the ecosystem, that we have about 10 semiconductor plants coming up, we have a very robust design ecosystem. In fact, you will remember that Ashwini Vaishnaw has already spoken about setting up, I think it's 5 nanometers, and then after that 3 nanometer, designing these chips in India. We already have 12 LLMs being foundational models being developed in India. One of them is also a voice AI model, which will sort of it's a game changer in the sense that many people do not know how to read and write, and voice is a game changer for them. And you have been tracking this space very closely, also along with me. Uh, your quick thoughts.
Well, Leslie, I think it's important to kind of try and get some perspective into this so-called nomenclature of tier one innovators versus tier two innovators. I was just going through the Stanford AI Vibrancy Index. Very interestingly, the Stanford ranking breaks this AI ranking of countries down into seven different parameters, which includes R&D, responsible AI, economy, talent, infrastructure, public opinion, and policy and governance. India's key strengths in that are three parts, two parts actually, R&D and talent. And the talent base in India is as large as the US, larger than China,
Yeah.
and in fact as large as Singapore, and Switzerland and Luxembourg and Israel. um, some countries which have clearly been at the forefront of development of technologies around the world. I think what's important to understand is whether um, the classical definition of which is a tier one innovator in technology versus tier two innovation in technology. Of course, the US kind of classified itself right at the start as, oh, we are the ones who build the foundational technologies, and other countries come and build applications on top. So we are tier one, the others are tier two. Now, of course, the United States can't ignore China, and China's got the volume, and China's making these models. But as Mr. Vaishnav said at the panel itself, he spoke about how India is building foundational models with 20 to 50 billion parameters, and all of them are capable of running enterprise grade AI applications, which I think is a fair assessment to make. And to his point, that India might not be building the largest of the largest foundational LLMs, but that doesn't make it a tier two country in terms of AI innovation per se. And I kind of agree with that assessment. Yes, of course, there is scope for more foundational research work, and but as you and I know very well, building these foundational LLMs takes massive amount of capital, and that sort of capital isn't exactly easily accessible. We've seen reports of how much money OpenAI has burned through. We've seen the kind of pivot that Google has had to make, and these are massive amounts of capital outlay. So of course, you can see where a nation like the United States would come from, but definitely in terms of the push and in terms of the focus, in terms of attracting investments, in terms of trying to bring forth policies, I think it's fair to say that if we were to rank the first three or first five countries in the world who are trying to push for innovation in AI, India should be counted within one of those five. And so yeah, that's what I feel, that the idea of just ranking the US and China as the top two innovating in AI, and then the rest are all um, number two, might be a bit of a futile exercise in my books, because it's not really serving anyone's purpose per se, is what
Absolutely, and
I
I,
kind
I fully agree with you out here because as far as the tiers are concerned, I think in today's time it's sort of a waste of time. It's a distraction. It's like talking about artificial general intelligence, so it's a
right.
clear waste of time. Rather, you could just see the kind of progress that India is making. In fact, actually, if you look at the Stanford rankings, which you referred to also, and which I had spoken about uh, earlier too, is that in 2024 we were ranked, I think, fourth, Then
Right.
in 2025, we were ranked third. Now, that itself shows that a lot of progress has been made. Will we be ranked second? Will we be ranked first? Obviously, the US and China are far ahead. Let's accept that fact. But what is really serving their purpose, or what is working in their favor at this point in time, is that as you pointed out, US had the foundation models. Many people sort of build layers atop that. Chinese have already built different kinds of models. They have hundreds of models that are pretty different. But to be fair, all of them have structured it on the transformer architecture. So,
Right.
I think about 95, safe to say 99% of the world's models, I'm happy to be corrected on that, are, sort of built using the transformer architecture, because nobody has found a better. I know that China is already toying with some other architectures, and so are some other countries. But at this point in time, the transformer architecture seems to be the one which is so, and that was outsourced, or rather open sourced, by Google. So that made a lot more sense from that point of view. Yes, everything that is foundational has come from there. In India, of course, when we're talking about sovereign AI, when we're talking about the sovereign AI models, we are talking about building foundational models from scratch. Bharat Jain is a classic example of that. Maybe the other so-called sovereign AI models are being layered on other major other foundation models. But at the same time, Bharat Gen is a sovereign AI model to a very great, because it's being built completely from scratch. And Shavik, as we were talking, I was looking at the numbers of local data sets that we have from AI Kosh. It has crossed 7,000. That's not a
Right.
small number. Even if you say that,
Absolutely.
there are many people who argue that, okay, this is, a kind of many of the data sets are not really good. I'm saying, let us discount 40% of the thing. It still is a very good number. Okay. So you still have about at least 4,000 data sets or 5,000 data sets that are pretty good. I would personally say so, that can be used. And the point, again, that we are creating those voice models, that's also pretty unique. In fact, India may become a leader in that space.
Right. And in fact, Leslie, a lot of uh, veterans in the field of AI have said one of the key points is yes, of course, some of the AI models that are being built in India are being built on an open source foundational architecture that was probably developed by Mistral or somebody else. Um, and fair enough for that. And if you want to say that that's not foundational engineering, that is one way of looking at it. But in terms of India's impact on AI, one of the key things that both the public and the private sector have been doing is to try and develop the local language data sets, as you mentioned. 7,000 data sets spread across 22 Indic languages for the Bhashini project that is overseen by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. And even Google, which has Project Vani, um, sometime in 2025 they came up with this benchmark. In 2024, in fact, they came up with this benchmark called Indic Gen Bench, which tests Google's AI models and their performance in 29 Indian languages, including 7 rarer languages which are not even counted as official Indian languages. So the kind of work happening on AI in India, I think it goes far beyond just developing core foundational models or spending billions and billions and tending towards trillions of dollars in R&D. And the reason why I find that to be an unfair way of classifying work on AI is because the kind of work that we are doing on non-English AI models is going to be really critical, because more and more people, as they come online, they are consuming the internet in their own language. And in fact, at the upcoming AI Impact Summit on the 15th of February, which begins on the 15th of February this year, one of the key things that India wants to showcase is its ability to build templatized models, which can then be used by countries specifically in the global south, because that was India's alignment in the G20 summit last year. So one of the key things that are being counted at the upcoming AI Impact Summit is India's ability to try and build models which can then be used with local regional languages and dialects in various countries which aren't represented heavily on the internet, because of course large parts of the internet are in English,
And we
and
have
the
already done
development of
that.
AI models.
We have already done that with the
Right.
digital public infrastructure, the DPI framework.
Absolutely.
And that DPI
Absolutely.
framework is
Absolutely.
being, extended to AI, just as it was extended from UPI to healthcare, for Aadhaar, healthcare, the other, the other stacks that are being developed over a period of time.
Right.
But it's not
Right.
something new. We understand how this can be done. And
Right.
one more thing, as we were talking, what struck me was each and every time we're saying that our found the argument on foundation models is, which is a very recent kind of phenomenon from a transformer point of view, saying that okay, fine, 60% of it is English, right? And the argument typically is that most of the sovereign AI foundation, with the exception of say Bharat Jain or another couple of them, are not foundational models in the true sense. That's what they argue. That's what the US argues,
Right.
and that's what
Right.
they say. The same argument is also extended to China, right? Now,
Yeah.
if you look at the English language itself, if I were to take that logic, English language itself was created from Anglo-Saxon dialects.
Right.
Okay, so English as a language itself evolved over a period. It was layered on other languages. So if you look at it, it was heavily influenced by the Vikings, by Norman French, Latin, Greek, and other such languages. So if you look at the evolution of language itself, if I were to draw a parallel with what's happening today with large language models, it's the same process. So I don't think there's anything wrong in layering. It's how unique can you make that model, and as you pointed out to our viewers and listeners, is whether they can be templatized and used for other purposes. So there's nothing wrong in that. Like people may copy your e-commerce model and develop something. Now, e-commerce, you can always say, no, grocers always existed. Yeah, but I created an online e-commerce model. It's working, it's templatized, other people are copying. Now, whether you copied it from Amazon, whether you did, but you built your own models, you localized it, you sort of, indigenized it, if you want to say, and have made it a successful app. That's exactly what I think Mr. Vaishnaw also was speaking about when he was talking about this, the whole thing of becoming an applications global hub, because all the experimentation will be done in countries like India and China. Now, China is a closed economy. China may not allow that kind of experimentation, but that can happen in India, and that's what gives India a certain edge. So I feel a lot is happening out there, and of course,
Absolutely.
but I think one thing which Shovik, you and I have been speaking. The only I say I won't say the thing that can spoil the party, but sort of slow down things is the pace of execution. Now we have 10 semiconductor plants that are happening. Those chips have to be, got out to the market. That go-to-market strategy has to be developed. There has to be a whole supply chain developed around it. All those things have to be put in order. Then also
Right.
another thing is the
Absolutely.
education system is being overhauled, because these new skill sets are very, very different. Not everybody can
Right.
become an AI expert as such. A lot of reskilling is being done by the Atal innovation centers, by other the whole sort of progress that is being made by Niti Aayog and other by METI and other departments. But still, that is a kind of a lacuna, and we have to improve our R&D. I think undoubtedly,
Right.
we have built IITs, we have triple IITs, we have NITs, but that has to seep down right to the grassroots level.
Right. And I think that's very true, Leslie. As you rightly mentioned, there are challenges to this progress. Of course, I was also just reading the transcript from Vaishnav's conversation at the panel at WEF yesterday, and one of the things that were he spoke about was that he questioned the idea that if the United States has a foundational massive AI model which is powering some parts of the world. Some corners have said that the geopolitical power will come if a country decides to switch off access to that AI model to other countries. And Vaishnav's defense to that was 80% of the world's applications can work on a small AI model, which is about 30 billion parameters in size. And India has a bouquet of that, as does some other countries like Singapore, Korea, Japan, and so on.
China.
So it's not necessary that the US would have AI as a sort of commodity power the way maybe oil was. And I think that's a pretty valid argument. um, and I think the only challenge here, of course, is that in India, I think you and I have also spoken about this before, that R&D spending as a percentage of revenue still remains very, very low. In fact, probably among the lowest ones among the top economies. And that is a key concern that we hope will change over the years as far as AI is concerned. We are seeing companies like Servam coming up, with Bharat Gen coming up. There is clearly signs of progress, but yes, of course, there are also signs of concerns. Everyone acknowledges that, and a lot of, in fact, a lot of startups towards the bottom end of the chain. Of course, they talk about innovation. Those are sort of application aligned innovation, where they're kind of trying to build a simple application. Maybe those would even have a market, but yes, of course. But there's of course the full side of the spectrum, and I think as far as you rightly said, there are progress around the Atal Innovation Mission. The Anusandhan National Research Fund, ANRF, is another fund which is trying to understand if we can build compute. You and I know, of course, the CTAC Bengaluru is building the kind of GPU architecture that they are working on,
They're also working on quantum
which
computers.
is absolutely, absolutely. And so these infrastructure, I'm sure, are going to have a significant positive impact on the overall industry.
I think absolutely. I think the crux of the matter, I would say, would be, execution is the key, if I were to put it in a simple thing. So it's just a matter of execution, and of course, not relying solely on this whole thing called jugaad, what we used to talk. It's a much abused word.
Right,
I remember. So that balance between jugaad and actual, R&D, which we are doing with the 12 LLMs that have been announced, and of course, if one were to sort of subscribe to what the government is saying, then we will have hundreds of such LLMs being built up, and the hope is always that India will, walk the talk as far as this is concerned, literally, because we're also creating voice LLMs. So
right,
we can at least, literally talk in different languages, or in tongues, as they would
right,
say. so so
right,
that's one. Of course, a kind of a related thing, since we were speaking about skills, is Shavik, remember we had that discussion on the Randstad Work Monitor 2026. Now,
right.
I've, I've sort of referred to that in the Friday newsletter. Basically, that big tech would have us, wants us to believe that, advances in AI will always, boost workplace efficiency, productivity, and enhance, shareholder value. Plenty of surveys will tell you exactly that, whether it is from Salesforce, whether it is from IBM, whether it is from Google, whether it's from Microsoft. I mean, these are just names, but everybody comes out. You and I are being inundated with these kind of reports every day, saying that, you know, uh,
Absolutely.
Gen AI and agentic AI are showing more 30% improvement, 40% improvement. Those numbers are like becoming meaningless. And then you have the MITs and all coming out with counter threads saying that, many of them have not gone past the pilot stage, and pilot to scaling up is a problem. But regardless of whether it scales up, whether it doesn't scale up, the interesting part about the Randstad Work Monitor 2026 is that there's a growing disconnect between this so-called corporate confidence in AI and employee sentiment. Randstad calls them talent, by the way. They do not call them employees. Nice names, but I would rather call them employees and employers.
I
So
would like to be called a talent. I don't know.
Yeah, it might lead to talent, because there is a reason for calling it talent, because at some point in time we are not talking about linear career growth, and this is exactly what the survey is saying, that there could be side hustles. Many employees could have many jobs, so these contracts saying that okay, you are exclusively working for this organization, or for this specific organization, may not hold water in the AI age. You may have to hold two or three jobs. You just lend your services or your professional services to a particular task and get out of it. What it does to the HR economy, the HR organizational structure, what it does to organizational structure, how companies rethink labor and HR practices, it's a different matter. We need to discuss that more in depth. But as of now, this particular report says that while 95% of employees expect their businesses to grow over the next year, only 51% share that optimism, and they call it the AI reality gap. So this is pretty interesting. And of course, the layoffs and entrepreneur. Your quick thoughts.
Leslie, I think I have always felt that the idea of a workplace restricting an employee and saying that no, you can't do anything else outside of your main job. I've always found it a little unfair, so to speak. Of course, I remember us reporting through our team extensively during the moonlighting, the time when moonlighting became a keyword, just around the pandemic, about which has also been 5 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember the idea of work and moonlighting and remote work, all of these things kind of changed, and so many developers, friends of mine are developers who work at big tech companies. For a good phase of 2 to 3 years, they were doubling up as AI training mentors on various edtech platforms, where they would their primary job would be their certification, or their or their degree, so to speak. They would go to an edtech company and say, "Look, I'm a developer at Google. I'm a developer at Meta," and they would be training people who were in the 11th grade, 12th grade, on how to do practical AI application development. And I think that's a great way of utilizing skills without a company holding you to account, saying, "Hey, you're getting salary from us, so that means you can't earn from anybody else." So I feel that it's a very valid uh, eh, ask to want the definition of work and work restrictions to change as
Yeah,
AI comes,
but there's
because
a fundamental problem out there in that kind of logic, because the point is salaries are given for commitments. So in the sense that you
yes,
have
of
so many,
course,
so unless those kind of structures are renegotiated, okay, saying that
right,
okay, fine, I will ensure that I dedicate so many hours to your company, and these are the tasks that I will fulfill, and I sign a contract to
true,
that, and at the same time I say okay, I will not share IP, because see, the another crucial part of this is security of the organization upholding that, because there could be some trade secrets, there could be the IP part of it, there could be copyright
yes,
violations,
of course.
there could be a mass stealing of IP. uh, how do you prevent all those? So that's the reason why all these structures are in place now. Just make when these surveys come out, many people don't think through these crucial parts of it, that organizations are not built just so when you're having a side hustle,
Right.
like say somebody working or moonlighting, let's use the word moonlighting or side hustle, whatever, they're all the same term at the end of the day. Now if I'm doing a side hustle in some other company, say I'm a Google employee and I'm doing a side hustle for a Microsoft thing, then that's a clear breach of trust, and there's always a suspicion. You may be known for your integrity, but how do you ensure that because at the end of the day, the knowledge that you are getting from Google, you're sharing it with
Right.
another company. So these are like gray areas, which the reason why we have such structures in place, they will have to be renegotiated, rethought. Maybe we can get some HR guys to talk about these things on a subsequent
Reanalysis, absolutely,
episode. So that would be
absolutely.
I think they're very important points. But before we conclude,
Absolutely.
I would like you to weigh in on this part also, because you have been both now an employee and a manager also. So the interesting part of this Randstad report is that while 72% of workers report strong relationships with their managers and 63% feel more connected to them than to the organization, only half now turn to their managers for advice, because AI is increasingly filling in that role.
I don't know if I really agree with that. I think AI would fill in for a manager when an employee is disgruntled with their manager more than when they're happy, because um, I don't know what to make of that. I personally feel that, of course, the equation that an employee would share with their manager is, of course, really vital. And I was also just looking at this statistic where 72% of people in this Randstad Work Monitor has said they have a strong relationship with their manager, which is pretty impressive given all the, the
Yeah,
banter around employee manager equations and
the
everything.
toxicity
Um,
that Gen Z talks about.
yeah, of course. So I feel that the idea that AI can replace a manager at work is I don't know if it applies for any generation above the age of 30 today. um I really don't see how it can happen. It can probably be in terms of trying to get some sort of an advice on the right way to frame a report, or in our case, maybe trying to understand how to write a headline better. Of course, in the newsroom, we've seen a lot of people use AI to kind of clean up or proofread their copies before sending it along to their editors, which I think is a fair usage of AI. But I don't think that's what the Work Monitor report speaks about. So
No, I
I
think
find
they
that to be a
yeah.
surprising statistic, in fact.
I think the work monitor would have, sort of surveyed people across sectors also. So in the manufacturing
Right.
sector, I
Absolutely.
I do not, means it's hard for me to sort of wrap my head around the fact that AI can replace a guy who has got
Exactly.
20-30 years of shop floor experience, because there are such nuances that AI will not even know because it's not in the public domain, and an LLM would, I mean, sometimes it could have scraped through some of the data, but for the to put a proper specific prompt and get that particular thing also requires a lot more intelligence from the shop floor worker, which I think it's easier sometimes to rely on a manager. So I think it much will also depend on which sector you are, what kind of the nature of the job that you are doing,
Right.
etc. Like if you're cleaning up a headline or giving a sort of a punchier headline and all those things are, or
Yeah,
having a
that's fair.
better sort of, if you're taking your copy and making it, you're sprucing it up, etc., using uh,
Right.
any of these LLM based chatbots, then it's a different issue. But I think for
Right.
very serious work, I would still be careful about it. Like, of course, we have many people doing entire coding today. Well, it's called, we understand it as vibe coding. But at the
Right.
same time, it takes a lot more time to clean up the code after that. So there are
Right.
a
Absolutely.
lot of, but yes, I think these are trends that one needs to take cognizance of, and you know they might actually sort of overwhelm before we even understand how it has happened. So it's important to spot the trends earlier and take action on it. If a trend is saying that people are relying more on AI than their managers, maybe we need to also question whether managers are today being are not as competent as they were before, or
Right.
their
Absolutely.
incompetence is showing up because of AI. So these are things which are part of the reskilling process, which an organization needs to take cognizance, and I think that's what the these reports actually point out at. But interesting
Right.
stuff.
Right.
So,
Right. Absolutely.
friends, yeah, I think we've had these discussions. Shavik has given us his point of view. He's been both a employee manager, both. Yeah, all of us have gone through that process. So we understand, we have been on both sides of the fence. We understand the angst, as they say, on both sides. So depending on whether you're a manager or an employee, it's the point of view that you take. But yes, we did speak about the AI ecosystem. We are on a good wicket, and if we do not make any major kind of goof ups, I think, regardless of whether the world labels us as a first tier or second tier, it won't really matter. Because it is like, they're talking about the GDP of the country. We have already reached what? We are the third or the fourth now, I think, as far as GDP is concerned, even in the world. So we were trailing Japan now with. But when we talk about per capita income, that is, I think, a better benchmark for me, or a better indicator of success, where everybody gains from that. Similar with AI, instead of speaking about whether it's a first tier or second tier, it is whether AI is going to benefit this 1.44 crore population or not. That's the more important issue out here, and which is why during the India Impact Summit, India is insisting on this whole thing about inclusive growth, which is extremely important. So
Right.
yes, viewers
Absolutely.
and listeners, hope you have a lovely weekend, and Shavik, you also have a lovely weekend, and we get back
Absolutely.
next week.